Hi, my name is Mandy Buchanan, and I'm the owner of the Go Deeper Bible Studies blog. And in this series, we are having a look at the four faces of God and how they relate to the four Gospels and Jesus' character and what our response should be. In the last two episodes, we looked at the face of the lion and the face of the ox, and today we are going to be having a look at the face of man. Before we get into that, though, I would just like to discuss some questions that I've had and a slip-up that I made last week. Firstly, let me apologize for my slip-up. In last week's episode, which was the episode of the ox, I referred back to the first video, which I said had been the face of the eagle as Jesus's kingly authority. But that was incorrect. If you've watched the first video, you'll notice that it's the lion that is the kingly authority. And we haven't got to John, which is the eagle, which is his divine authority, or Jesus as the Son of God. So that was a slip up there, and I apologize. The other thing was, why these faces? Now, the lion is generally known as the king of the jungle. He is the king of beasts, generally. And so when we think of the lion, we generally think of royalty. And so that is why the face of the lion has been put with Jesus' kingly authority. Then the face of the ox. The ox is generally a beast of burden. He was used for many years on farms to do manual labor, and he would carry on and just do the work. He was strong, he was well built, and he would just carry on doing the work that was set before him. And so in the ox, we see a symbol of Jesus' servanthood and his strength because of the ox being a beast of burden. And then in the man, which we're going to look at today, I think is fairly obvious. Jesus was known as the Son of Man. So there isn't a lot of symbolism there. Jesus was fully God and fully man. But the man, yeah, is obvious. Then in the last video, we will have a look at the face of the eagle, which is Jesus's divine authority, or Jesus as the Son of God. And that is the eagle because generally we think of eagles flying high in the sky, and we also relate the sky to the heavens, which we see as the throne of God and where God lives in that. So that is why the different faces depict the different aspects of Jesus's character. So let us move on now and have a look at Luke as the face of man. Now, the main thing that Luke wanted to put across was Jesus as the Son of Man. Luke was a doctor, and so he was very interested in man. And we see in Luke the genealogy. In Matthew, we had seen the royal genealogy of Jesus. And we spoke about how it goes a different way if it's your ordinary man on the street. And so Luke's genealogy is the opposite to Matthew's. It works on the opposite way around. So instead of starting from Abraham and moving up to Christ, it starts from Christ and moves back to Abraham. And there it's just looking at Jesus as the man. And we also see in the nativity scene in Luke that instead of Matthew showing the kings or the magi, very royal, prominent people, Luke focuses on the shepherds who came to Jesus. And the shepherds were more humble men. They didn't have any like authority or royalty to them. They were just your humble man on the street. And this was only shown in Luke. So again, we see the discrepancy between Matthew and Luke, showing different parts of Jesus's character. The one being the kingly authority, and the other one being the humble man. Luke is also the only gospel that really gives us any details of Jesus's life before his ministry or between his birth and his ministry. It's the only one that really looks at Jesus being presented in the temple for circumcision and blessing. And it looks at Jesus's childhood when he was 12 years old and was found in the temple. And Luke is the only book that tells those stories of Jesus's childhood and growing up and how he actually got to the point of ministering. And so we see here again that there's a focus on Jesus's humanity, and that he was human. He did, like us, have to start as a baby and grow up, and it says that Jesus grew in wisdom and in favor with God and man, and it shows a growth process as well, which we know as humans. In Luke, the main focus of Jesus' miracles was to show Jesus' sympathy and compassion for the average person, and how he reached out to them, and he cured the sick and set the demoniacs free, and he just had compassion. And his stories, his parables in Luke, are about everyday life and ordinary things that would happen. So those focus on the natural aspects of life. For example, one story that is only found in the book of Luke is the story of Zacchaeus, and that shows Jesus' compassion. Zacchaeus was an outcast, and people didn't want anything to do with him. He was a tax collector and a sinner, and Jesus actually focused on him and said that he was coming to his house. And so this again shows Jesus recognizing the value of humanity. The key word that is used most often in the Gospel of Luke is obviously the Son of Man, and that is used 25 times in the Gospel of Luke. In terms of Jesus' ascension into heaven after his death, in Matthew, at the time of Jesus' ascension, we see that they are given a kingly command, the great commandment, go into all the world and make disciples. But in Luke, we see that Jesus blesses his disciples, and then it shows them going home afterwards. So it's quite a human touch again. It doesn't really, at this point, talk about the great commandment. It just focuses on Jesus blessing his disciples, and then as they return to Jerusalem without him. And then it also goes on in Acts to tell more of the ascension. But in Luke, it focuses on just Jesus blessing his disciples and them going back without him. So I trust that you've seen some of Jesus' humanity in the Gospel of Luke, and that you've enjoyed this episode. And next week we will have a look at the face of the eagle and how it relates to Jesus as the Son of God. Thank you and goodbye.